Hello, welcome back. And joining us now from Canberra is the Australian Christian Lobby's Lyle Shelton. It must be a bit quiet in Canberra there, Lyle, with everyone's attention on the G20 meetings in Brisbane.
Well, that's right, Kent. Yeah, Canberra's empty for a change, and the focus is on that wonderful regional city of Brisbane, so that's a good thing. Gives us a bit of a break here.
Okay. Now, Lyle, we heard in our news bulletin earlier that a number of churches and religious freedom organisations are very concerned about the Victorian Labor Party's plan to limit the ability of religious schools to employ staff who share their beliefs and their values. Is it fair to say, though, that the ALP just wants to reduce discrimination wherever possible?
No, I don't think so, Kent. This is really quite an extraordinary measure that's going to limit religious freedom, which is protected by the UN Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, because the right of parents to educate their children in the religion of their choice is protected under international law. And what this policy is doing is taking away the freedom of churches and Christian organisations and Christian schools to maintain an ethos in the selection of the employment of staff, to select staff who actually share their ethos. And this freedom will be greatly diminished by the policy that Victorian Labor is taking to the November 29 election.
Okay, we've heard some pretty strong claims along those lines, Lyle, that if Labor was to win government in Victoria later this month, we could end up with a situation where, for example, only religion teachers and chaplains would be covered by the discrimination exemptions. But wasn't Labor in government for several years and actually had this legislation in effect? Does history tell us that it's the sort of disaster that some groups are now predicting?
No, that's not quite right, Kent. It was something that was brought in right at the dying days of the previous Labor government prior to 2010. So the policy was only in place for a very short period of time, some months, I believe, and then it was repealed by the current government that's in. And now Labor is saying that if they are elected, they're going to put this policy back in place. It really is something that it's an imposition that political parties don't have to live with. They have the freedom to employ staff who share their ethos. It only stands to reason that a religious organisation or a religious school should also have that same freedom.
Yeah, good point. Do you think that this situation, Lyle, this clash of rights, would have ramifications for other religious organisations too, inside and outside Victoria?
Yeah, I think it sets a precedent. If one state goes down this path, I'm sure there'd be people in other states who would also similarly want to restrict religious freedom. And so it is important that we maintain this principle of religious freedom and that this doesn't occur. There's been a big groundswell of support for maintaining freedom. 2,400 emails have gone through the ACL campaign platform to Victorian Labor asking them to rethink this policy. So there's certainly a lot of concern out there in the community.
Okay. Hey, thanks so much for your time this week, Lyle.
Pleasure, Kent. Thanks for having us.